Hey, everybody. Last week, I talked about keeping the bigger picture in mind. We discussed how easy it is to become consumed by patches, leagues, rankings, and pathways, while forgetting that the real mission is developing great people. Soccer is, of course, an incredible game, but it was never meant to become our identity. It's one of life's greatest classrooms, and our responsibility as parents and coaches is to use it to prepare young people for life. Today, I want to build on that idea by talking about something I believe is quietly reshaping youth sports in ways many of us don't fully appreciate. There's a dopamine trap out there. This isn't really an episode about social media. It's an episode about incentives. It's about what happens when the things that receive the most attention aren't necessarily the things that matter most. And I think this conversation is just as important for parents and coaches as it is for players. Let's start with just basic observation. Never before have young athletes had more access to information. This isn't news. A 12-year-old today can watch Leo Messi's first touch, study Rodri's positioning, analyze Mbappe's runs, or learn finishing techniques from professional coaches around the world. That's really incredible. Players can connect with college coaches. They can create recruiting videos. They can build relationships. Clubs can communicate more effectively with families than ever before. There are tremendous benefits to technology. I don't think the answer is pretending social media doesn't exist, technology doesn't exist, or telling kids to stay off their phones forever. That's neither realistic nor helpful in the year 2026. The question isn't whether social media is good or bad. The question is this: what is it teaching our children to value, and how do we overcome that? Because every system rewards something. Schools reward grades. Businesses reward productivity. Sports reward performance. Social media rewards attention. The danger isn't attention itself. The danger is when attention quietly becomes more important than development. Our brains are designed to reward progress. When we accomplish something in earnest, meaningful, our brains release dopamine, a chemical associated with motivation, learning, and reward. That's a good thing. It's part of how we're wired to pursue difficult goals, different goals. Think back to our own childhood. Maybe it was making the varsity team, winning a championship, scoring your first goal, hearing your coach tell you they'd noticed your improvement. Those moments felt incredible because they represented months or even years of effort. You couldn't fake them. You couldn't shortcut them. The satisfaction came from earning something difficult. Now compare that to the experience our kids have today. A player posts a 30-second highlight clip. Within minutes, notifications begin arriving, likes, comments, shares, notoriety, followers. Again, none of those things are inherently bad, but they arrive immediately off of a 30-second clip. And our brains aren't always very good at distinguishing between the satisfaction of genuine accomplishment and the satisfaction of public approval. One requires sustained effort. The other requires a phone. Over time, those incentives begin shaping behavior. Without realizing it, we can start pursuing what feels rewarding instead of what actually helps us grow. One of the biggest changes I've noticed in youth soccer is what I would call the highlight first mindset. Players naturally begin asking themselves different questions. Instead of asking, how can I become a better soccer player, a better teammate? The question slowly becomes, how can I create something worth posting? Those sound similar? They're not. One is focused on mastery, diligence. The other is focused on attention. Social media rewards attention. It rewards spectacular moments. Bicycle kick, nutmeg, banger from 30 yards out, celebrations in the corner, kicking the corner flag, whatever. Those moments, celebrations deserve to happen. They're exciting, they're memorable. But, here's the problem. Those moments make up maybe 1% of a soccer match, really. The other 99% is discipline, positioning, communication, sacrifice, recovering defensively, making simple passes, supporting teammates, scanning the field, moving without the ball, remaining mentally engaged when nothing exciting is happening in your vicinity. Those are the things elite players actually spend most of their time doing, but they don't generate millions of views. If young athletes spend hours consuming highlight culture, they can begin believing that's what elite soccer actually looks like. It isn't, and thankfully we had the World Cup to look at recently. Elite soccer is remarkably simple. The best players in the world consistently make the right decision at the right time. Most of those decisions would never trend online. I remember hearing a coach say something years ago that has always stuck with me. He said the difference between good players and great players is that great players become obsessed with doing ordinary things extraordinarily well. That sentence has stayed with me because it runs completely against what our culture often celebrates. We love spectacular moments. Championship teams love consistency. Parents often ask me how their child can separate themselves from everyone else. Ironically, the answer usually isn't learning something flashy. It's not my answer. The answer is it's becoming dependable. Can your teammates trust your son or daughter? Can your coach rely on your son or daughter? Does your son or daughter make good decisions under pressure? Do they defend when they're tired? Do they encourage teammates after mistakes? Those habits do not generate viral clips, but every coach notices them from every level. Every level, grassroots to pro. There's another consequence of highlight culture that concerns me even more, honestly. Eventually, some players begin performing for an audience instead of competing in a game. I feel like I see this in ECNL environments all the time. They become more concerned with looking confident than becoming confident, more concerned with appearing elite than doing the work required to become elite. Here's your patch, pal. The online version of themselves becomes increasingly polished. Then they step into a real match. Real soccer isn't edited. You lose the ball. You misplace passes. You have poor execution. You make mistakes. Sometimes you have terrible games. That's true for every player, including professionals. But if your identity depends on maintaining the image of being exceptional, every mistake feels threatening. Instead of thinking, what can I learn from this? You begin thinking, what will people think? That's a dangerous shift. Growth requires humility, courage. Learning requires failure. If we're afraid to fail because we're protecting a reputation or an image, we stop taking the risks necessary to improve. Ironically, trying to appear successful often slows down actual success. Parents, I think this is one of the most difficult realities we face. Our children are growing up in an environment where comparison never stops. When many of us were kids, comparison ended when practice ended. Today, it follows them home. They open their phones and they see another player announcing a new club, someone else committing to a college, a teammate posting highlights, another player training with a professional, a ranking list, a pyramid, the pyramids we see all the time that aren't true pyramids. I digress. It's just a ranking list, a recruiting graphic, an edited version of everyone else's success. What they rarely see are the setbacks, the tears after getting cut, the lonely hours of practice, the injuries, the self-doubt, the sacrifices. Social media is a highlight reel. Life is not. One of the greatest gifts we can give our children is helping them distinguish between those two realities. Teach them that someone else's success doesn't diminish their own. Teach them that growth isn't always visible. Teach them that meaningful progress often feels slow. Almost always feels slow. The strongest roots grow underground long before anyone sees the tree. I also think this conversation extends beyond individual players. It affects entire teams. One of my favorite things about sports has always been the locker room, different personalities, different backgrounds, different strengths. Learning to trust each other, learning to sacrifice for one another. There's something incredibly powerful about pursuing a goal that's bigger than yourself. That's where lifelong friendships are formed. That's where leadership develops. That's where humility grows. Great teams aren't built because every player is trying to become famous. They're built because every player believes the mission matters more than individual recognition. Study Spain from this last World Cup. No country embodied that better. The best teams I've coached weren't always the most talented. They were usually the most connected. Players celebrated assists as much as goals. Defenders celebrated clean sheets. Substitutes stayed engaged. Everyone understood that their role mattered. Every touch, every moment matters. That's difficult to maintain if individual attention becomes the primary currency. If players begin competing for followers instead of competing together, something valuable begins disappearing from the locker room. It doesn't happen overnight. It happens slowly, happens quietly, almost invisibly, until one day you realize you're coaching a collection of individuals instead of a team. And that almost always happens the worst time of a tournament or in the playoffs. This is where parents and coaches have tremendous influence. Young people naturally pay attention to what adults celebrate. If we only praise goals, they'll believe scoring is all that matters. If every social media post highlights individual achievements, they'll naturally pursue individual recognition. If we spend more time talking about rankings than relationships, they'll conclude rankings define success. Culture is shaped by what leaders consistently reward. So what should we celebrate? Celebrate the player who owns a mistake. Celebrate the teammate who encourages someone after a bad game. Celebrate resilience. Celebrate courage. Celebrate discipline. Celebrate honesty. Celebrate consistency. Celebrate the player who arrives early and stays late because they genuinely love improving. Those qualities will serve them everywhere. They'll serve them in marriage, in business, in friendship, in parenthood, long after soccer is over. One of the questions I ask myself regularly as a coach is this: if soccer disappeared tomorrow, what would I hope my players still remember? Would they remember my formation? Would they remember my, technical advice? Probably not. Would they remember a particular drill? Maybe. But I hope they remember how they were treated. I hope they remember learning to handle adversity. I hope they remember discovering they were capable of more than they believe. I hope they remember teammates becoming lifelong friends. I hope they remember that excellence isn't about perfection. It's about pursuing your best with humility and integrity. Those lessons matter whether someone becomes a professional soccer player, a teacher, a business owner, a parent, or a doctor. That's why I believe soccer is one of life's greatest classrooms. The field gives us opportunities every single day to practice the qualities that produce meaningful lives. At Forge AC, we are ambitious. We want our players competing against outstanding competition. We want them chasing dreams. We want them chasing the most difficult goals. We want them earning opportunities they've dreamed about earning. But we never want those opportunities to become the definition of who they are. College offer is wonderful. It isn't your identity. A championship is amazing. It isn't your identity. A viral highlight is fun. It isn't your identity. Your character is who you are when none of those things exist. That's what we're ultimately trying to build. Because one day, the trophies will collect dust, the social media platforms will change or vanish, the algorithms will change or vanish. Even soccer itself will eventually come to an end, but integrity doesn't expire. Humility doesn't become outdated. Kindness doesn't lose value. The ability to persevere through hardship will never stop mattering. Those are the qualities that create meaningful lives. And if we can help young people develop those qualities through this beautiful game, then we've accomplished something far greater than producing talented soccer players. We've helped prepare them for life. Thanks for listening. Episode 2, we'll keep creating some content. Just remember, we're not just developing soccer players, we're developing people. Keep the bigger picture in view. See you next time, maybe.